It really means hatred and dislike of white people. That's what the word Anglophobia means today. And the mass migration crisis we've got is connected to this. When your ancestors, the best thing they ever did was build a mud hut, and you see what the English, the British, Western civilization have created, of course you're envious. We either live in a democracy or we don't live in a democracy. And I would argue we probably don't live in a democracy. We live in the illusion that we live in a democracy. They're terrified because history shows us what the populace does to traitorous leaders.
Well, let's start by speaking with Nick Buckley, MB, about his book. Nick, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us here on Unprecedented.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me back.
Well, I owe you the space to talk about your book, because each time we mention it and then it falls off the bottom because we get too distracted by the other subjects. So let's start with your book before we go into that very uncomfortable but necessary subject, sex offenders who import themselves into the country, really, and then commit crimes here. Tell us about your book again, Nick.
My book is actually related to the topic we're going to be talking about in a minute, because my book's called Anglophobia. And Anglophobia is the hatred or dislike of the English, but it also means hatred and dislike of the British, the Anglosphere. It really means hatred and dislike of white people. That's what the word Anglophobia means today. And the mass migration crisis we've got is connected to this for two reasons. The first reason is, why do we allow so many unwanted, let's emphasize that, unwanted people to come to the UK? And part of it is because since the Second World War, the Western world, and especially educated Western white people, have been terrified of being called Nazis, because we saw what Nazi Germany in Hitler did, and we thought to ourselves, they're just like us. They're not Rwandans. They're not Cambodians. They're not Chinese. And we expect people like that, to be killing each other. But this was Germany. And if Germany can be fascists and Nazis and evil, that means we can. So therefore, we've got to do everything we can in our societies to make sure we're not Germans. Hence why everything Hitler did, we're trying to do the opposite of it. Importation, equality, compassion, everything he did, we're trying to do the opposite. And that's a legacy of our the ghost of Hitler. But then I look at other stuff in the book as well. So another one is, not only why did that happen, but why do we have some people who hate themselves and hate their country? And we call this English self-hate. Why? Can they not see this is damaging the country? Can they not see, if we allow these policies to happen, that the country gets poorer or more unsafe? And the answer is, they're mentally ill. And I don't say that lightly. I go through lots of mental health conditions in the book and show how it's connected to, let's call them the woke, the politically correct, the far left lunatics. And once you read that chapter, you go, I see it now. These people are ill. Now, if isolation can make you mentally ill and it's a punishment, because that's what we use in schools, isolation. We even use it in prisons to punish the most violent men, because we're tribal creatures. So if isolation damages us and punishes us, does belonging, does being part of a group, is that part of the self-help? And that's why I think mentally ill people are attracted to left-wing causes and other causes as well. It's a way of self-help, because suddenly they belong. And if your group has a low bar to join, then of course you're going to join those groups and be anti-racist and anti-fascist, and refugees are welcome here. These are just groups that the mentally ill flock to because suddenly they feel like they belong. The book goes into lots and lots and lots of things. It also explains why we have the children of immigrants who are born in this country, why lots of them hate this country. And the answer there is simple. I mean, lots of my answers are simple. I'm not an academic. I say it the way it is. And the reason they hate the country is it's envy and jealousy. When your ancestors, the best thing they ever did was build a mud hut, and you see what the English, the British, Western civilization have created, of course you're envious. And you must say to yourself, white people are either superior to my people, or white people were crooks in evil and they cheated their way to the top. I know which one I'd be picking if I was a migrant. I'd be going, white people are cheats, because that makes me feel better. It makes me realize my ancestors weren't failures. White people are cheats. And a lot of this envy and jealousy comes out of that. If you're left wing, you'll hate the book. If you're slightly in the middle or the right wing, I think you'll love the book. It explains in simple language what's going on, why our country's failing. And we have to know why it's failing if we're going to stop it and improve it.
It's quite challenging conceptually for you to say that. And as you say, woke people who want to blame us for everything that's wrong in the world and pay reparations for everything that's happened from climate change to slavery, will say, how dare you, Nick, how dare you try to reestablish some sort of a more supremacist position? And they'll suggest maybe that you're a white supremacist. It's one of those things that people throw out in the same way that they say you're a climate change denier, clearly inferring a connection between not agreeing with the climate emergency and somehow denying that the Holocaust and so forth. How would you respond to those who say that you've gone too far the other way?
A valid point. My answer would be white supremacy. Does it exist? Well, the simple answer is, does it exist today? Well, the evidence probably says it does exist today, that white culture is more supreme than any other culture. I would say that that's almost 100% factual. You can prove that almost on any metric. Now, is white supremacy always the best culture? Absolutely not. It's only been that way for maybe 1,000 years, maybe 500 years. Will the next culture that rules the world, will it be white? I doubt it, because we're dying. It'll probably be yellow. It'll probably be Chinese. 2,000 years ago, would Western Europe have been the best place to live in the world? Absolutely not. You could argue 1,000 years ago, it would have been the Middle East. It could have been South America with the Aztecs. Supremacy, what they mean by supremacy, is the most dominant culture at that time. That changes over time. So at this moment, yes, all you got to do is look at where is everyone flocking to across the world? Where are they all flocking to? Western Europe and North America.
Well, why is that? Why do you think this occurred, incidentally? The African continent has stupendous resources, as does China. China's actually got arguably a longer civilized culture than Britain.
Yeah.
So why is it that the Industrial Revolution, for example, began in Britain? Why is it that Britannia ruled half the world for so long? Was it luck?
Like all these questions, it's probably a multifaceted answer. There's probably hundreds of thousands of reasons that all contributed to each other to lead to the English, the British ruling the world. But first of all, let's look at Africa. Africa's a basket case. Africa has always been a basket case. Sub-Saharan Africa has never produced anything. I think the last thing they produced that we found was the fishing spear. And that was tens and tens and tens of thousands of years ago. They produced nothing and still produce nothing. If you look at other places in the world, China's a good example. Was it 5,000 year history in China? Again, very insular. Their culture is quite insular. It's always been authoritarian. It's about control. It's always been about control. Does that type of culture give people the freedom to experiment, give people the freedom to come up with new ideas when 99.99% of them will be rubbish ideas? But we hit something in Western Europe, and part of it will be a fluke. Part of it will be the climate, because if you live in a place where it's fairly hard to survive, there's snow every year, you've got to plan for winter, you've got to make sure you work harder in the summer and keep reserves behind ready for the winter. That gives you a mindset of always trying to outperform nature and the elements. That gives you a different way of looking at the world. If you lived in Greece and every time you were hungry, you'd pick some figs off a tree, pick an orange, then that way of looking at tomorrow and survival isn't there. So I think it's a combination of things. But all civilizations grow, all civilizations flourish, and all civilizations die. And it looks like Western Europe is dying at the moment, and it could be terminal.
I'm indulging myself a little bit here because this is a really interesting conversation. The Greeks had an empire and they had a flourishing culture. While where I came from, Estonia, a small country, the Northern Europeans were too busy poking the seeds into the ground in their short growing season to build those empires. You could argue that what's used to be called the Protestant work ethic is really about being miserable all year round, while the Mediterranean attitude is about being happy.
Yeah, and we see this in many, many different types of people. It's about short-termism. It's about, why should I might not be here for the future, so why am I wasting my valuable time planning for something I'm not going to enjoy? And why do I need to plan for the future when everything I need is here? We become very creative when we put in different situations. If there's no need for us to be creative, why would our bodies waste energy building big brains for us to become creative if there's no need for it? So it's a chicken and the egg scenario.
So this book's available now. Anglophobia, a price worth paying to be English. It's specifically about England then, not Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It starts off with the word Anglophobia, meaning it's about dislike and hatred of the English. But then by the second chapter, it's really talking about anti-white hate, because that's what Anglophobia now means. If you're connected to these islands through language, through skin color, then you're hated because of Anglophobia. It's got very little to do now with the English.
Okay, well, thanks. How much is it, by the way?
It's about 12 quid. You only can buy it on Amazon. Yeah.
I'm really interested in that. I will definitely return to this. I haven't read it yet, I have to confess, but I really want to. Fascinating, because I guess the lessons that you put there could be very insightful in terms of a forgotten historical agenda that's causing the woke community to make very bad decisions, which are eroding the culture of the country. And let's talk about one aspect of that. I've noticed that in social media, you have been quite expressive of the fact that a disproportionately high number of sex offenders are migrants. And I venture to suggest asylum seekers, which often people think of as illegal immigrants, are not technically the same. But I just don't believe all the people who are coming across in the boats are actually legitimate asylum seekers. Why have you become so motivated to highlight this, Nick?
I highlight lots of things. This is just one of the things I highlight, and it's very topical at the moment. We're idiots. Let's start with that. We're all idiots, and we're governed by fools, and we vote those fools into power. Who in their right mind wants to import more criminals? We have lots of shortages in this country, lots of shortages. I'll tell you one thing. We're not short of criminals. We're not short of rapists. We're not short of people to claim benefits. We're not short of any of those people. So why do we keep importing more and more and more of them into the country? We have white British people who are criminals. We have white British people who rape our children. Of course we do. Every culture, every society contains bad apples and contains criminals. We know that to be true. I've never once said that we were perfect and we didn't have crime until brown and black people turned up. Never the case. We always had crime here. My point is, why are we importing more? Because that's what we seem to be doing. And we've got the stats for this now. People like Rupert Lowe MP have been a breath of fresh air. He's forced Parliament and forced the Home Office to release stats. And some of the stats that have come out this last year, foreigners in the UK are twice as likely to commit crime than a normal British person. Twice as likely. That's just any foreigner coming to the country is twice more likely. Let's look at sexual assault. Foreigners are 3.5 times more likely to commit sexual assault in this country. Now, when you dig into those figures, some nationalities jump out at you. Syrians, Afghans, Eritreans, are up to 20 times more likely to commit sexual assault in this country. And when we say sexual assault, oh, Nick, what does that mean? That means attacking, damaging, and hurting our women and children. That's what that means. Damaging, hurting, and assaulting our children and our women. That's what sexual assault means. And we allow people from certain countries who have got horrendous cultures and traditions and norms, and we allow them to come here.
This is one of the newspapers that newspaper articles that the team found from March, actually. It says foreigners convicted of up to 23% of sex crimes. Data revealing full extent of convictions must be acted on. That's what the Conservatives say. And I think this might be the data you're talking about. Data from the Ministry of Justice obtained under Freedom of Information laws. So that 15% of sexual offences, including rape, were accounted for by foreign nationals across the 2-year period. And then another 8% of convictions recorded as unknown nationalities, but still not British, I'd imagine. So if you add all that together, that's 23%. Even though foreign nationals make up 9.3% of the population, so it tends to back up, roughly speaking, your figures. Why is this going on?
It's going on because these people come from cultures where this is normal. People look at the Taliban and those countries and go, they're evil the way they treat their women. They're evil. They hate women. They don't hate their women. They love their women. They have a backwards way of doing it and showing it. They cover them up from head to toe to protect them. Because they know that their fellow citizens are extremely rapey and will rape them. So therefore they keep them locked in a house and dressed in bin bags, not out of hatred, out of love. Now they're the people we're inviting into our country, and they're watching women walk around the country, around the cities, down the streets on their own, and they're going, she's an easy target. In fact, I think she probably wants it. Why else would she be walking round the streets in a little dress on her own with no male chaperones if she didn't want it? Of course she wants it, because that's how I've been brought up, and I know she wants it. So they do a bit of raping. So that's their culture. Why do we allow them in the country in the first place? Every single party in the country, maybe apart from the Greens are mental, but apart from the Greens, every political party in the country at every election talks about reducing immigration, stopping illegal immigration and things like that. So they all talk about it. Why don't they do it? And the reason why they don't do it is one of those shortages I mentioned a minute ago. Because we've got shortages in the UK. The biggest shortage we've got is a lack of backbone. That's the biggest shortage we've got. We never have any politicians with a backbone who will do what needs to be done to fix a problem. It's always, will this make me look good at the next election? Will this upset my voters, my supporters, my party? Will I get elected again? Will I be able to climb the greasy pole if I say this, if I do that? And what we need less politicians and more statespeople. And the difference is a politician is someone who's only looking after them and their career. A statesperson is someone who says, I'm going to do this for these reasons for the country. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me again, because everything I do benefits the country. And if I've got to sacrifice my political career for one term, and I know I've left the country a little bit better than when I found it, that's a success in my book. We don't have anyone like that anymore.
We don't have many, I have to say. I think we've got the worst served parliament in history in terms of quality. It's just abysmal, and it's causing trouble. I don't want to go too heavily into the Bell Hotel riots. If you're watching this live, I just highlight the fact that later on to the day we're originally broadcasting this, Claire Dyer on Dire Consequences will be going into detail about the demonstrations around a place called the Bell Hotel in a part of London. If you're watching this in repeat, then you'll find that in the archive as well. But that's a really shocking example of where apparently the police look like they've been colluding with the left to bring demonstrators in. But I don't want to go into that one so much. What I'm really interested in is another one, which is in Ballymena. Let's have a look. This is in Northern Ireland, where two migrants were alleged to have sexually assaulted a girl. I mean, it was really quite a dramatic situation there. And I'm wondering if we can, can we add that to the stage? Here it is. I mean, these are pretty dramatic scenes we're looking at there. And Northern Ireland's no stranger to violence, but this is not sectarian. This is not Catholic Protestant violence. This is a community in a place called Ballymena, which I know pretty well, where the public were absolutely incensed by allegations that foreign migrants had assaulted a local girl. And the frustration you're seeing there is the sheer anger and rage because they felt that the state had not properly protected the girl. 2 14-year-old boys charged with sexually assaulting a teenage girl there. And it seemed to me, actually, that the mainstream media tried to play down the fact that we were talking about I think it was Romanian migrants in this country, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think these scenes are scary, my advice is get used to it. Because honestly, over the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot more of this. Because the UK is a tinderbox. And all we're doing now is waiting for a spark. And we're going to see lots more of this across our towns and cities. It's inevitable. I don't want it, but it's inevitable. Predicting violence isn't the same as campaigning for violence. I'm predicting this because I can see no other way. Politicians are not listening to anybody. They're pretending they are, but they're not. The Ballymena riots, you're right, were started because a local girl had been sexually assaulted by some Romanian teenagers, I believe. 2 have been arrested. 1 fled back home. It's amazing how they can go back home when they want to. And it wasn't a one-off. The reason why this kicked off at this particular assault is because I think it was the 3rd one in 2 months in that little town, and people have had enough. We've seen people have had enough across the UK. You've seen the demonstrations outside the migrant hotels. Every one of them's a tinderbox. There was a video where the police almost ran over a protester in a van. To be fair, he shouldn't have been in front of the van as it was driving off. You know, he shouldn't have been stood there. But if he'd have been properly run over and his head crushed and he died, that would have been the spark that burnt the country down to the ground. That it could be any incident like that does it. We had an incident, I think it was yesterday, or it might have been 2 days old now, depending when I saw the video. And it was the police in England somewhere shepherding a load of anti-racist, anti-fascist, so-called anti-fascist protesters back to a train station somewhere. And the police involved, one of the top police officers, was shouting instructions to his officers. And he shouts to his officers, make sure the fascists don't attack us on the left or the right.
That, I think, may have been the thing that Claire Dyer attended at the Bell Hotel in Epping. So she gives a very graphic account of how she herself was treated there. That's on, if you're watching this live, it's on at 9:30 for the summertime. That's roughly a half an hour after we finish. But that's probably what you're seeing there. Yeah, what's interesting about what you're saying, though, is I tend to feel the Southport riots, the ones when the murdering scum Axel Rudakabana was portrayed as Welsh by the media and by the government. And we were not given the truth, even though everybody really knew the truth who followed social media. He's as Welsh as I am Northern Irish. Remember, Opic's not an indigenous name. And why would I hide my culture? My parents were Estonian. That's my original culture. And Axel Rudakabana comes from some African country his parents did. So it's the deception, it's the feeling that we're being patronized and misled, which makes it worse. And I do agree with you. I think what's happening is a kind of vigilantism, which I'm not advocating, but which the public, ordinary people, are getting involved with because they don't want their children to be raped. And they feel that the culture, as you've described, of the country is going in a very dark direction, Nick.
We either live in a democracy or we don't live in a democracy. And I would argue we probably don't live in a democracy. We live in the illusion that we live in a democracy. Pardon me. Because the people of this island have never voted for mass migration, ever. Ever since Windrush. Since Windrush, the working class have been telling the establishment since 1948, we don't want any more migrants coming here. There was a government report set up in 1950, 2 years after Windrush, because the people in those 2 years were saying, we don't want any more. We don't want any more.
Just to explain for those who don't know, Windrush was literally a ship that came here with migrants.
Windrush was like the second coming of the Lord. So a ship like Jesus landed in the UK, opened its doors like Noah's Ark, and all these wonderful migrants all stepped onto the Holy Land called England and started making England so much better by diversifying the country. That's how Windrush is talked about. The truth is, Windrush was a ship that didn't have any business, that decided, wonder if we could, we're in the Caribbean, I wonder if we could fill it with people from the Caribbean and take them to England. And people bought passage on the ship because unemployment in the Caribbean was at record levels, and those countries were fearful of violence and wanted to get rid of some of their unemployed young men. That's what Windrush really was about. But I've lost my train of thought now. So we've never been asked about this. And not only has it got worse and worse and worse, and we've all seen our standards of living decline, and we've also seen crime increase, a lot of it connected to mass immigration over the last 10 years. You know, Boris Johnson, worst prime minister of my lifetime, millions flooded in, he opened the gate.
Worse than Keir Starmer?
Yes. Yeah, I think worse because we all knew Keir Starmer was going to fail. We knew he wasn't up for the job. Boris Johnson was worse because he portrayed himself as the new Churchill. He made us all believe. That he was going to save us. And being let down is so much worse than Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer just proved us all right that he couldn't do anything. But Boris Johnson sold us a dream and made us all feel foolish that we bought into that dream, that he was going to fix the country. A bit like Reform UK now. You know, people are buying into Reform because they think they're going to fix the country. They may not. But if they don't, the backlash is going to be huge if they let people down. So it's being made foolish that upsets people. I
increasingly feel that our only chance is Reform UK, but we'll talk about it another time. I know you've been more critical. I do see signs of hope in the fact that we can sweep away some of that horrible failed uni party, Tory, Labour, Lib Dem nothingness, and at least replace it with somebody else. But as I say, I don't want to go down that path too much. We talk about reform a lot here, actually, with people. But let me hand back to you. So if you put all this together, Nick, what's the message? What is it that we should be doing, if anything, to save the country?
We need to be doing more of the same of what we started doing this last few months. We need to be protesting. We need to be upset. We need to be angry. We need to be letting our politicians know we're angry. We need to be gathering in big groups and trying to stay non-violent, but showing the world, showing the country. Because believe me, our politicians are scared stiff at the moment. They may not show it and they may pretend they're not, but they're scared stiff. The police are terrified at the moment. The police have already said, if this kicks off, we haven't got the numbers or the competency to deal with it. If it kicks off in more than one or two areas at the same time, they're terrified because history shows us what the populace does to traitorous leaders. So people in government, MPs, councillors are terrified because if it kicks off and it gets violence, they know they're going to be attacked. Hence why they're going to come down again with a heavy hand. They're going to keep smashing us in the hope they break us. But that never works. You look at every totalitarian regime around the world, they all fall eventually. Because what happens is the people get to a stage where they hate their leaders more than they're afraid for themselves. Now, we're not quite there yet. We're still quite afraid for ourselves. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to get a criminal record. But it's not going to take long before, and it's happening now. You can see it on the street. Some people going, I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to sacrifice myself for the future of my children and my grandchildren and to keep my children and women safe. And that's what men do. That's why men go to war and sacrifice themselves to protect the tribe. And we're getting very close to that in this country. The politicians don't have long now to do U-turns and start changing their policies. Otherwise, they're in huge trouble.
Nick, thanks as ever for that ominous warning to politicians. Have your say. You can go to X and I will engage with you.